I'm not saying the virus isn't real. I'm not saying it's not a tough situation, but this narrative that the lockdown has no negative impact on our collective health is a lie. Let's start with fear. It's on most of the news shows, commercials, and news websites. Fear, 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 fear. Children, old people, fear, fear, fear. What they won't tell you is that fear weakens our immune system and can cause cardiovascular damage, gastrointestinal problems such as ulcers and irritable bowel syndrome, and decreased fertility. It could lead to accelerated aging and even premature death. Fear, anxiety, and stress is not healthy for us. So why is it all about fear, 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 fear? Even in the commercials, it's pharmacy pill, and then the next commercial is suing a pharmacy company from 15 to 20 years ago about a product that they once told you was safe, but now they tell you on their news sites that you can't question anything, just buy into our fear, which we do know is not healthy for the human body. Also, child abuse cases are spiking in many parts of the world. CBS North Texas Hospital reports spike in severe child abuse cases believed linked to stress from coronavirus pandemic. It's not just the stress, you're taking away schools, gyms, and putting families on top of each other for longer than they normally would be. Chicago Tribune, child abuse cases spike in Kane County during COVID-19 stay-at-home order. Even the Washington Post reported with kids stuck at home, ER doctors see more severe cases of child abuse. And when they say severe, you'll find out in the Huffington Post, child sex abuse reports spike as country shelters in place, advocates say. In March, for the first time, the majority of RAINN sexual abuse hotline users were minors for the first time. And outside of the headlines, let's just use basic common sense and morality. If you're wealthy or you live in a nice area, it might be a lot easier to do a stay-at-home order than most people. If you're poor, middle class, or have a rough family situation, what keeps you alive and thriving is your gym, is your school, your place of work, your routine. To get out of the house and do things to get away from your abusive family, relationship, or housing situation. Of course, it's going to have a negative effect on millions upon millions of people. And the ones who say, oh, just work out outside or go for a walk, probably have never lived in an area that's not safe or urban and doesn't have a lot of wildlife, or doesn't understand the scientific proven effects of why having a routine and a job and a life is much healthier than not having those and being forced to stay inside more. Back to the headlines, even New York Times reported a new COVID-19 crisis, domestic abuse rises worldwide. Movement restrictions aimed to stop the spread of coronavirus may be making violence in homes more frequent, more severe, and more dangerous. I would say that's absolutely so. So before we move on, the point I'm trying to get to is I understand it's a complicated situation, but this narrative that there's no negative health impacts to lockdowns, quarantining the healthy, and shutting off the economy, it's simply not true. So we need a level playing field to have a debate, not I have the moral high ground by locking people and you are a bad person for disagreeing. That narrative BS has to stop. From the media, from the celebrities, from the big corporations, and from everyday people who for some reason believe that there's no negative health effects to the lockdown. That, once again, is a lie. Let's move on. ABC7 recently reported that suicide is on the rise amid stay-at-home order, Bay Area medical professionals say. That corroborates with what some California doctors have been saying, that they've seen a year's worth of suicides in the last month because of the impact lockdown is having on mental health. And this shouldn't be a surprise. LA Times even admitted the economic devastation wrought by the pandemic could ultimately kill more people than the virus itself. Where I would say to LA Times, it's not the devastation just wrought by the pandemic, but our response and our government's strategy to handling it. Somehow common sense and all scientific understanding of health that we've had for hundreds of years goes out the window when a pandemic hits, and all of a sudden staying home good, crashing economy good, lockdowns healthy, closing gyms healthy, and anybody who disagrees bad. That's a lie, and that needs to be fact-checked. Recently in the UK, a Nobel Prize winner has said that he believes the lockdown saved no lives and may have cost them. Now that's a bold statement, not made by me, but made by a Nobel Prize winner in the UK. It's not as crazy of an opinion as you might think, because The Guardian and other news organizations recently reported that the data shows that 8,196 more deaths at home in England, Wales, and Scotland have happened compared to their 5-year average for around this time of year. And out of those, it's not all COVID-19 related deaths indoors. Most of them, 6,546, are non-COVID deaths. So why could this be? It could be many reasons. Lockdowns are not healthy for people. Canceling elective surgeries is wildly dangerous. this, having a strategy that manufactures a Great Depression is wildly dangerous, and there's dozens of known health effects of what they're doing on every level, including the fear that I just mentioned earlier. And when it comes to saving the elderly population, somehow the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about many states, including New York, putting COVID-19 infected patients into nursing homes and having a lot of the people who are dying being in nursing homes. They also found out that most of their new hospitalizations were not essential workers or people that were going out all the time. It was people quarantining and locking down in place in New York City. Speaking of the elderly, what do we know about elderly people who live long? All you have to do is study Liguria, Italy, where people live longer than any other region of Europe. According to a lot of research, while genetics may play a role, more important, scientists say, are lifestyle factors such as active outdoor living, a tight-knit community, and a healthy diet. Did you catch that first part though? Lifestyle factors such as active outdoor living and a tight-knit community. These lockdowns took away active outdoor living and their tight-knit community that kept them alive longer. So is it unfathomable to suggest that this is going to have a negative impact on their health and billions of people's health around the world? Well, of course it's not a crazy thing to say. It's backed by science, it's backed by health studies that have been around for decades. But just because corporate media says you can't say it, and Facebook and Google will delete your videos if you step too far of what they consider approved science and approved health, then all of a sudden you're not allowed to say it or think it. But isn't it interesting that Amazon is doing phenomenally right now as small businesses are forced closed by the government, and the owner of Amazon also owns the Washington Post? Isn't it interesting that Facebook and a lot of these tech companies are doing awesome during this shutdown, economically and financially? But you're somehow not allowed to question it, even if you have a Nobel Prize like Luc Montagnier for discovering HIV, and I won't even tell you what he said. You gotta look it up yourself, because if I post it on Facebook or YouTube, they might delete my video for relaying the message of what the HIV discoverer and Nobel Prize winning scientist had to think about it. Welcome to 1984. You could think what the corporations tell you to think. And before I leave, real quick, two things. One, recently the CDC came out and said that it probably has a 0.4% mortality rate for people with symptoms. First of all, it's tricky wording because that doesn't even count the millions of people that probably have it without symptoms. So if you consider that, even according to their own calculations of what they think, that 0.4 can slide down even lower than 0.3, which is far off from the 3.4% mortality rate that the World Health Organization was telling everybody months ago. And of course, the mainstream media was smearing President Donald Trump for suggesting that probably wasn't true. Now even the CDC estimates that it's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times less deadly than they thought it was. But just ignore that, and the fact that they said all the hospitals would be overcrowded was the reason that they went for the lockdown strategy. And I'll just let Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis take it home.
Our data is available. Our data is transparent. In fact, Dr. Birx has talked multiple times about how Florida has the absolute best data. So any insinuation otherwise is just typical partisan narrative trying to be spun. And part of the reason is that because you got a lot of people in your profession who waxed poetically for weeks and weeks about how Florida was going to be just like New York. Wait 2 weeks, Florida's going to be next. Just like Italy, wait 2 weeks. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened. Not only do we have a lower death rate, well, we have way lower deaths generally, we have a lower death rate than the Acela Corridor, DC, everyone up there. We have a lower death rate than the Midwest, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. But even in our region, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida has the lower death rate. And I was the #1 landing spot from tens of thousands of people leaving the #1 hot zone in the world to come to my state. So we've succeeded, and I think that people just don't want to recognize it because it challenges their narrative, it challenges their assumption, so they got to try to find a boogeyman. Maybe it's that there are black helicopters circling the Department of Health. If you believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you.
Last question.
Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. God bless you. If you'd like to support my page, you can become a Facebook supporter. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/raretalk. You can sign up to my free email list at stayintouchwithme.com, or you could share this video. Right now, everything's okay, but Google and Facebook and a lot of these big internet companies that really control most of the internet and where people choose to spend their time, they don't like anybody that disagrees with them or the World Health Organization. So every day I wake up, like tens of millions of people around the world who just lost their job due to the shutdown, I wonder if it's going to be my last day of being able to post or being able to make money on YouTube or Facebook from ad revenue, because they just keep going further and further into censorship and anti-free speech policies. Thanks again, have a beautiful day, and I'll be back.